Good evening and welcome. My name is Arva Rice. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the interim chair of the Civilian Complaint Review Board. I would like to call the CCRB's June public meeting to order. Would the rest of the board please introduce themselves?
Good afternoon. My name is Michael.
Out of the 28th district in Southeast Queens.
June?
My name is June Northern. I am a marital appointee and I live in Brooklyn.
Charlene?
Good afternoon, Charlene Brown, Police Commissioner Designee.
Thank you. Since we do not have a quorum today, I'm going to table the minutes until the next meeting. As we kick off the June board meeting, I want to say happy Pride to everyone celebrating. The CCRB is showing support at Pride events across the city, and we welcome anyone and everyone to join us. On Monday, Commissioner Sewell announced that she would be stepping down. Commissioner Sewell was the first Black woman to lead the largest police department in the country and took on this role when crime was rising. While we did not always see eye to eye on disciplinary issues, we were able to forge a cooperative working relationship, and I thank her for her service to this great city. I also want to take a moment to remember George Floyd. May 25th marked the 3rd anniversary of his killing. George Floyd's death sparked a global wave demanding police reform and recognizing the need for accountability. The CCRB continues to work for civilians who believe they have experienced misconduct and to push for greater accountability for police officers. For several months, the CCRB and the NYPD have been in negotiations to work out a plan to share data and documents needed to investigate racial profiling and bias-based policing cases. Last week, we came to an agreement, and Commissioner Sewell and I signed a memorandum of understanding that will allow the CCRB to move forward with these investigations. While this MOU addresses the issue of access to evidence, it does not solve for the lack of staff and budget. The City Council bill that created this unit outlined 33 positions necessary to complete these investigations. As of next week, the team will have 17 members, and the proposed budget would not even cover our current personnel cost, let alone allow us to hire 16 more people. While the CCRB is committed to thoroughly investigating profiling complaints, we cannot do this without the strong budgetary support. Profiling complaints are extremely complex and resource intensive. We will not be able to investigate profiling complaints in addition to other complaints in our jurisdiction at the level currently proposed by the administration. The agency hopes that the final budget includes the necessary support. If it does not, the agency will return to the former practice of referring profile complaints to the NYPD. I would also like to reiterate the importance of Intro 938, the City Council bill that would give the CCRB direct access to body-worn camera footage. BWC footage is proven to improve the rate of definitive conclusions in CCRB cases. Investigations with BWC footage have a definitive conclusion as to whether the officer committed misconduct or not, nearly 40% more than cases without BWC footage. This is better for officers and civilians alike. Also, this bill would save the NYPD and the CCRB time and resources. The time it takes to complete an investigation is an ongoing conversation with the department, and this would be one way to shorten investigative timelines. I am hopeful that the City Council will pass this bill. I will now pass it off to our Executive Director, Jonathan Darsh. Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair Rice. In April, our agency lost a beloved member of our staff, David Dweck, in a motor vehicle accident. David was a key member of the CCRB, both as a hardworking colleague and as a friend. His loss has been deeply felt. Here and today, we want to honor David's legacy and his service to the city by renaming this room the CCRB boardroom in his honor. From now on, we're going to call it the David Dweck boardroom. I want to welcome David's wife, Jess, who's watching today online, and David's father, BJ, who's with us today. David will be forever remembered at the CCRB, and we want to thank him and his family for all he did for this agency and his colleagues. Last month, the NYPD announced they revised the disciplinary matrix while testifying before the City Council. The department proposed making 5 changes to the matrix. Later tonight, Assistant General Counsel Suzanne O'Hare will explain these proposed changes. The CCRB will forward any board member or public comments made tonight to the department for it to consider as part of its public comment period. 2 weeks ago, the APU submitted the legal brief requested by Trial Commissioner Maldonado, closing the trial against the officers who killed Kowalski Trawick. Deputy Commissioner Maldonado will now review the evidence and arguments before making her recommendation to the police commissioner. Before we get started this afternoon, quick updates on agency operations. Our office is open to walk-in complaints, but it is also possible to file complaints online at nyc.gov/CCRB complaint. That is nyc.gov/CCRB COMPLAINT. Or you can call us at 1-800-341-2272, or you could also call 311. If anyone here tonight wants to file a complaint, we have 2 investigators on hand ready to take new complaints, Emma Steidehar and Rob Bryan. They're in the back. We also have a member of our CAU staff here tonight, Amy O'Sullivan. Finally, some ground rules for this afternoon. If you are joining us online and would like to make public comment, please use the raise your hand feature. If you are here or if you are online, please keep your comments to a 4-minute maximum. Next month, we are going to begin streaming the board meetings on YouTube, but to participate in the meetings remotely, you must still register and sign in through WebEx. I want to thank the staff for their hard work, and thanks again to the members of the public, both here and online, for participating in this meeting.
Members, do you have any questions of our Executive Director? Anyone online? Do you all have any questions of our Executive Director? If not, then we are going to have a presentation from our Deputy Chief of Investigations and Assistant General Counsel, Ms. Suzanne O'Hare.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Suzanne O'Hare. As Chair Rice has stated, I'm an Assistant General Counsel and Deputy Chief of Investigations here at the. And I would like to discuss with you today the proposed changes that the NYPD is suggesting for its disciplinary guidelines. So just a little background, the NYPD established its guidelines back in January of 2021. We commonly refer to, as does the NYPD, these disciplinary guidelines as the matrix. And they always were designed to be updated periodically by NYPD. The purpose of the matrix, I think that there are probably a number of purposes that would be identified by NYPD, but for me, I think these are the 3 most important. and that is to establish uniformity of penalties to ensure that each officer receives the same or a similar penalty for the same misconduct as other officers. The second important purpose is to inform those members of service what the possible penalties are. It puts them on notice and it lets them know that there are consequences for when they violate the patrol guide. And then finally, the guidelines, the matrix show the transparency of discipline for members of service. It lets all of us, the public at large, know exactly what officers are expected to do and what the consequences will be if they fail. So CCRB entered into a matrix MOU, a memorandum of understanding, in February of 2021. And in that agreement, both the CCRB and the NYPD each agreed that they would follow the guidelines that are set forth for all of the recommendations that are made, and they would only deviate from that matrix upon extraordinary circumstances. And so in May of this year, NYPD announced some proposed changes. Now, the changes that they propose are actually many, but there are only 5 categories that affect CCRB and are within CCRB's jurisdiction. So I've set up a table on this slide, and I'm going to list the misconduct. We'll go through each one. You'll see at the top there is a mitigated penalty, a presumptive penalty, and an aggravated penalty. As the board is aware, NYPD have set up a number of factors that allow for mitigating reasons and aggravating reasons to either lower or increase the prospective penalty. For these 5 categories, NYPD has not proposed any changes to the presumptive penalty or the aggravated penalty. They are only concerned with changes to the mitigated penalty for these 5 categories. So let's begin. The first category is an unlawful search or entry. And as you can see, the presumptive penalty for a violation of this section of the patrol guide would be 10 penalty days. And when we say penalty days, we're referring to forfeiture of vacation days by that member of service. And the aggravated penalty is 20 days, no changes there. What has changed today, and this is of course a proposal, is that instead of 5 penalty days as a mitigated penalty, they are recommending training. Now, training is a non-formal discipline, and that means that it would not be reflected on that officer's disciplinary history. The next category is covers 3 separate categories: threat of force, police enforcement that was improper, or removal to a hospital without justification. And here again, presumptive and aggravated remain the same. The proposed change is from 5 penalties days to training. The next category is failure to process a civilian complaint at each precinct. If a civilian comes in and wants to make a complaint or file a complaint against a member of service, officers are required to help them do that. And if they fail to do so, here in the mitigated penalty, NYPD is recommending changing it from 5 penalty days to training. The fourth category is discourtesy. That qualifies as rude or improper or profane, either oral statements or gestures. And here the recommendation is to change it from 1 penalty day to training. And then finally, the last category is offensive language. That is language that disparages someone's race or religion, mental health or physical status, sexual identity or sexual expression. And here the recommendation on the mitigated penalty is to change it from 10 penalty days down to 1 penalty day. And so finally, as was mentioned before by Mr. Darsh, there is an opportunity for the public to make a comment on these proposed changes by NYPD. You can go to the NYPD website on their policy page, and you click on the comment submission link, and you can either support these changes and tell NYPD why you support them, or you can recommend that these changes not be made and why you feel so. And the website link for that is www.nyc.gov/site/about/public-comment.page. Thank you all very much for your attention. I seriously appreciate that.
Do the board members have any questions of Suzanne? Yes.
So in regards to unlawful entry search, I see in the parenthetical substantive physical presence or remaining, I know that there are different categories. Is the proposal to align with de minimis entry and unlawful search? Because I believe that's the other option in terms of discipline.
I can't tell you exactly what their purpose is, whether they are trying to align it with de minimis, but yes, you are correct. At this moment, with this proposed change, it would make substantial physical presence or remaining in a residence unlawfully to be the same as a de minimis entry, which we generally consider to be like a foot in the threshold.
True for all three sections or just the mitigated?
Just for the mitigated.
Know why these particular areas were selected in terms of changing or proposing a change to the mitigated penalties?
I do not have any background on why they're proposing these particular changes. I'm not sure if Mr. Darsh may be privy to more of their reasoning.
I had a meeting with members of the first deputy commissioner's team, along with Mr. Kadushin, our general counsel, in which we discussed the issue of offensive language with them, but that was the only allegation type that we discussed. I mean, I had actually suggested that they reform the offensive language category in a manner similar to how they had changed the entry and search by dividing it into different rows, and they went in a different direction.
This is a question. I'm not sure if whether the agency or just, other advocacy organizations have examined deviations from the matrix that the commissioner, has imposed on cases that have come to the department, and whether these categories, if there's any sort of a kind of statistical relationship to deviations and these categories. I don't expect you to have that data in front of you, but I'm just curious.
You have such low expectations of me. But unfortunately, you're absolutely correct. That is something that would have been put together by our policy unit. And John, do you have any information that you could help Mr. Puma with?
So we have not done a formal analysis of the deviation memos. As someone who reads all of them when they come in, again, offensive language is something that has been an issue for some time now, as is the entry issue. But most of the time, the issue is more whether the department is going to find any misconduct occurred at all. And so it's not truly a deviation from the matrix. it's more of a reluctance to find that misconduct occurred. I shouldn't state it that way. It's a disagreement between the agency and the department over whether misconduct occurred.
Any other questions for me? Then I thank you for your time. Oh, yes,
I have one.
Mr. Siegel.
And
Sure.
let me just say, seeing you behind the lectern and being over here, I see why you've been so effective with judges over the years. Another aspect of the matrix is it's supposed to instill progressive discipline such that subsequent violations are penalized more strongly. I don't know if we have any analysis of whether that's been done, but is there anything in this change that you view as impacting that approach?
I don't think that anything that they're proposing here that affects CCRB is going to have any effect on that, because it really is just in the mitigated penalties. The progressive discipline that Mr. Siegel refers to is where an officer is found to have a recent history of similar conduct, and that may require, pursuant to the NYPD's matrix guidelines, to elevate a penalty to show that this is a progressive type of discipline. And so because this is all for mitigated penalties, I don't think that any of this will have any effect on progressive discipline.
Were there changes made to the portions of the matrix dealing with progressive discipline?
No, there were not.
Any additional questions? I'm not sure if I had a chance to ask folks on the line if you all had any questions. Charlene, did you all have any questions?
Yes, I'm not sure if it was mentioned, but is there a length of time for the public comment period? When do public comments close?
I don't think that I believe that there is a finite period of time during which the public can comment, but offhand, I don't know what that date is. The NYPD website, I imagine that information would be found there.
Am I right, wrong, Matt?
Correct.
June 18th is the deadline, Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate it. So June 18th is the final day for public comment. So for those,
Are we going to have discussion of this from board members? As I think you said that comments we make will be submitted as if they're comments.
Yes.
Great.
thank you for that. We will now hear from the public. Sorry.
Should
I'm sorry.
probably have the.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I misunderstood. Yes.
I certainly would like to take the opportunity to comment if we're submitting it as part of the comment record. I'm going to three things regarding the proposed changes to the matrix. One is, as is obvious, but has gone unstated, these are all downgrades. So they've reviewed the matrix and they've moved certain mitigated categories down, and there's been no correction of situations in which board members have felt that the matrix options are insufficient. And let me just say it this way, it sends the wrong signal to revise the matrix and only downgrade discipline. It is, I don't necessarily disagree with some of these changes in the specifics, but they had the opportunity to thoroughly revise the matrix and chose only certain downgrades. And that sends a certain signal. Secondly, there's an emphasis here on training. As a board member, I'm fine recommending training in certain circumstances, certainly for junior officers or first offenses. But for the entire time I've been on this board, which is a long time now, I've been asking for some visibility into what training is provided when we recommend training as a discipline. Because I'm not comfortable recommending training unless I know that the training being given is responsive to the violation that occurred. I've been to the taser training, for example, and so I know what that is, but I don't know what discipline what training is imposed for a variety of offenses, ranging from offensive language to failure to give a business card to unlawful entries. I don't know, and I think it would be helpful to the board to know. Third point and last, and I appreciate everyone's patience. The presumptive penalty for stop and frisk is way too low. It's 3 days. So 10 days if you unlawfully enter someone's home, but 3 days if you unlawfully enter their body. The whole reason this matrix exists is the finding that the NYPD over a number of years was unconstitutionally deploying stop and frisk. That's the whole way we got here. And at a time when the department recently defended the monitor's report about the conduct of the anti-crime unit by saying, well, by our calculations, only 18% of the stops were unconstitutional. We clearly still have an issue. And 3 days as a presumptive penalty for stop and frisk is insufficient. Many of us have said that. I know that's been communicated to the department, and that needs to be revised upward to be consistent with the philosophy of the matrix and as a sufficient deterrent and penalty for what remains the leading issue in the cases that we see and to the public. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other comments or seconds to what has been laid out for us? Yes.
I do want to echo everything that Mr. Siegel said. Especially around the lack of transparency that the department has around training. Just because, again, training is fine in certain circumstances, but without knowledge of what those trainings are, without actually being able to examine the material around training, this is absolutely sending the wrong message. It's not a message to try to correct improper behavior. So again, I stand with what John says.
And yet, did you have a comment, Joseph?
I also concur with the statement from Mr. Siegel.
Any other comments from those who have joined us on the line?
I don't know, maybe I definitely concur with Mr. Siegel, and also just look at me from looking at from many positions, is that it's sending a bad message to the public when we're trying to get things right, and when you downscale, or it almost as though it looks like um, to look over and be responsible of employees. And NYPD hasn't, all police officers are employees of the city, and that there has to be some kind of respectful accountability, and I think that the agency and NYPD could revisit it and look at these things and see whether or not they should move forward as such. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, what is
Yes.
the process? Where do we go from here with this? How is this going to be implemented?
That's a great question. And your question is about how do our comments now get reflected back to the NYPD? The comments that we talked about right here, or you're talking about the overall process of public comment?
I'm talking about, how will we decide whether this becomes policy? who makes that decision?
That's a great question.
The police department makes the decision. They have 30, they have posted this change to the matrix in a manner similar to how we did when we proposed the rules. And based on the public comment, the police commissioner will then determine whether or not to go forward with the proposed changes to the matrix, or if they need to make significant revisions to their proposed revisions, whether they have to repost again for another time of public comment.
Any other comments or questions? My only comment is I also agree with what you laid out. So thank you so much for thoughtfully laying that out. And to state the obvious once again, this is also of concern considering the lack of concurrence between the recommendations that the CCRB is already making and the police department. So for us to have a trend of downgrading the penalties with that as our current reality is of particular concern. All righty. Any other comments? Comments or questions? All right. If not, I'm going to go ahead and press forward in the agenda. We will now hear from local community leaders. Thank you so much for joining us. And as a reminder, we're going to please keep your comments to 4 minutes. Yahira, would you please call on the first speaker?
Thank you, Chair Rice. First, we'll be hearing from Omeria, who's joining us virtually.
What happened? Hello?
Hello, Omeria, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm trying to do complaint about a captain named Hantu Duran. He's responsible for the death of 14-year-old Jacob Borbens, and apparently he has a friend who works in the CCRB. Her name is Rosemary. She's a deputy director and a director of case manager, Mr. Mahadeo, and they are not allowing me to do a complaint about this captain.
So I believe if you would like, ma'am, I can talk to you after the meeting and explain the reopening process and why your complaint was closed and why it was not reopened. But that is essentially what happened. It was not the deputy director of the case management unit acting on her own. It was that the agency determined that we could not proceed with the complaint. And then when you made a request to reopen it, I determined not to reopen it.
It was seemed that you are friends with this captain, and this man is responsible for the death of Jacob Borben, a 14-year-old boy from the Bronx that he's providing guns to.
Ma'am, we're going to ask for you to continue your conversation with our executive director so that we can clarify why that case was, why CCRB decided not to go forward with that case.
I'm just letting you guys know that this man is friend with the captain, and that's why he's closing my cases when this captain is responsible for the death of the 14-year-old Jacob Warrens in the Bronx. He's providing guns to these children in the Bronx, and this man apparently is friend with this captain.
I'm not sure who the man is that you're referring to, but I do know that in our processes that no man is allowed to make an independent decision like that. So like I said, we'll continue this conversation to figure out why, in fact, it is that the case was closed, because people don't have the ability to make decisions based on familiar or any other types of relationships.
And how do I do complain about this man if I believe that he's friend with the captain and he's closing my cases? Who I do complain about this? Because Rosemary, also the deputy director, they all friends with these captains. They just Hispanic defending this captain when he's responsible for the 14-year-old Jacob Borben's death.
to make a complaint about one of our staff members, you would make it to me. But if you want to make a complaint about me, you would do it to the Department of Investigation. And I'm the one who made the decision not to reopen the case.
Well, I'm here. I'm defending Jacob Bourbon and many teenagers that have been killed in the Bronx. This man is friend with the captain, Hansel Duran. Apparently, he had a drug dealer helping him in the Bronx, and they are responsible of drug dealing and prostituting children from 14 to 12-year-old little girls in the Bronx. And you are responsible for it. And that's unfair if I don't have nobody to do complain about you, sir. You're defending this captain because he's your friend, but you know that he's killing children and he's prostituting children for 12 years old. This man needs to be fired, and that's it.
Ma'am, I hear you, and I'm not sure what the process is in order to make sure that she can speak to another person, but you do have a way to be able to address this issue that John's laid out for you. And so we want to make sure that we can talk you through that in order that you have a place to go in order to register your concerns and your issues. How would that happen for her to be able to have a conversation after this?
I have her email and I'll reach out to her and explain for her what happened in the process. And if she wants to make a complaint about me, how to reach out to the Department of Investigation.
Okay. Thank you. Who's next on the list?
We currently do not have anyone else with their hands raised, so we can move to in-person public comment. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody just raised their hand virtually. Next, we have Maggie Hadley.
We have somebody, Mr. Myers says, who's on virtually that we're going to go to first, or was this
here?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry. Should I go now?
Is there someone on virtually? I'm Michael Myers. I'm the president
of Civil Rights Coalition. In my short time just to speak to you today, I want to first of all congratulate the executive director and the chair of CCRB, because in my judgment, they are intelligent, they have high integrity, civility, and courage. You do a job I could not stand to do, because I don't have the kind of patience that you have. I have the intellect. I don't have the patience. Secondly, I want to say in my short time, I appreciate the resignation of the police commissioner. I didn't hear any applause for the police commissioner during the chair's brief comments about her. I heard applause for the CCRB member staff member who passed. And I'm glad there was no applause for the resignation of the police commissioner. Out of civility, for no other reason than civility. But I think that she was not good. She was not for us. She was not for CCRB. And the recent proposals that we hear from our staff member, your staff member, from the Department of, they should have come here, not you. They should have come here and talked to you, the CCRB, about their proposals to change the rules and to reduce discipline. Who in the hell are they? Who do they think they are? And I want to check on the authority, the legal authority of the NYPD to change their policies in terms of and policy with respect to how they discipline and downgrade discipline for police officers. It's CCRB's job to recommend discipline, not the police commissioner or the retiring police commissioner. So I think you should check that, double check it, triple check it. Check with the mayor, see what his opinions are. Now, I must tell you that she never came to talk to you directly, as far as I know. She was invited, because we wanted to hear from her. We, the people, wanted you to hear from her directly, and we wanted to be in the room when you talked to her directly. And we wanted her to hear the people's comments about her department and her administration and her lackluster leadership of it. She was the police commissioner. She was the police officer's police commissioner. She was not our police commissioner. So I welcome, and I say for the record, that I welcome her resignation. And I thank her for it. Finally, let me say that I want to say that the time period for comment on her proposal, I haven't received it. I guess the Civil Rights Coalition is not on her e-list. But the civil rights community, as far as I know, I just talked to Norman Siegel earlier today, civil rights community never heard anything from the police department about downgrading their penalties. But what the hell do they think they are? Thank goodness she's leaving. Can somebody say amen that she's leaving? I don't want anybody to think that we don't welcome her resignation, because we do. She is not a good police commissioner. She is irresponsible and has been irresponsible. And the sooner she gets out of here, the better. So we'll comment about her proposals to amend the laws and the regulations, because she never believed in disciplining cops. So nobody should be surprised. She was the cop's cop. She made that very clear. Not coming to the CCRB meeting, not coming to meet the public. Who the hell does she think she is? Well, in less than 30 days, we don't care.
Thank you for your comment. I believe we do have somebody on the line who has a comment.
Yes,
Thank
Chair.
you.
Next, we'll be hearing from Maggie Hadley.
Thank you so much. My name is Maggie Hadley, and I'm a staff attorney in the Law Reform and Special Litigation Unit at the Legal Aid Society. The Legal Aid Society serves as the primary public defender to individuals prosecuted in the state criminal system in all 5 boroughs across the city. Together with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, we also serve as counsel to plaintiffs in Davis versus City of New York, one of 3 federal class actions lawsuits challenging the New York City Police Department's stop and frisk and trespass enforcement practices. I want to speak on the NYPD's alarming proposed amendments to the matrix, and Legal Aid will also be submitting written comments on this as well. Many of the proposed changes raise serious questions about the NYPD's commitment to holding officers accountable and deterring misconduct. Broadly speaking, the NYPD seeks to reduce penalties for specific acts of misconduct, as well as implement procedural changes allowing for the calculation and imposition of lower penalties in general. First, the proposed amendments would reduce the mitigated penalty for a number of offenses against the public, including threats, unlawful searches, and discourtesy to training. Each of these reductions signals to officers and communities that the offense, at least in some cases, is less serious than previously conceived. These proposed reductions will also undoubtedly lead to officers receiving training in situations where such discipline is inappropriate and will not promote accountability. This board defines training as the least severe discipline appropriate for officers who misunderstand a policy, and the matrix allows extremely wide latitude for the imposition of a mitigated penalty and counsels that a mitigated penalty may be advisable in a vast number of circumstances, certainly not limited to when an officer has made a good faith mistake. We also echo the board's comments during this meeting about concerns surrounding training as a penalty in general, including the need for greater transparency about the content of training. Second, the proposed changes include a narrowing of the types of misconduct in which penalties may run consecutively rather than concurrently, which will likely reduce overall penalties imposed on officers found to commit multiple acts of misconduct stemming from a single incident. In some cases, this change may even cause conduct that previously would have resulted in charges and a formal prosecution to result in a mere command discipline. In addition, the NYPD seeks to remove language in the current disciplinary matrix that preserves the matrix's influence in settlements and ensures that settlements are not used as a pretext to disregard matrix-appropriate penalties. Each of these amendments would undermine the matrix goals of transparent, fair discipline that deters future acts of misconduct. I also note that these proposed changes arrive amidst other alarming revelations about a lack of NYPD accountability, including the Federal Monitor's recent report about rampant unlawful stops by neighborhood safety teams, and the former police commissioner's rejection of the majority of this board's disciplinary recommendations in 2022. We know from experience that when the NYPD waters down discipline, community members like Legal Aid Society clients pay the price. The matrix holds great promise to improve the disciplinary process and ensure officers are held to account for misconduct, but it will lose all efficacy if the NYPD is permitted to continue diluting it. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. We appreciate it, Ms. Hadley. Yahira, is there anyone else on the line?
No one else has raised their hand at this time.
Thank you. And I believe we did have somebody else in the room who had a public comment. If you wanted to come to the podium and introduce yourself.
Hello.
Hello.
I spoke many times here, but unfortunately you don't handle stalking. I was run down in the streets by mobs today, and it was unbelievable on the property of MTA. There was a call made at 2:30 at booth R310 to Sewell. It didn't go through. There was a call made to Mark T. Stewart. It didn't go through. It went to Lisa Lee at MTA. That went through. And I told her, I asked her if she could reach out to was it Jana up the top there? I'm having a problem with my heart. I make sure to let it be known in the hospital when I go there. I sit back there very quietly. You notice I don't move. It's very difficult not to move and watch people creep around. When I turn my head, I see a hand. Problem with my heart now. I had a heart attack in 2011. Let's cut to the chase. A letter a day, go to the White House. On the M1714, the time of the booth that I'm at when I call 311. Every correspondence to everyone says the 311 to the 911, to the emails and the letters, to the MTA, NYPD, mayor, governor, elected officials, and the president. I asked them all 16 years where did the complaints go. It's only been 16, just 16. If you spent a day watching me, I don't go out anymore. You'll know every move I make. I went out when I went to the hospital. I don't go out. I go out to dump the garbage where I stay, private street, quiet street, and they stand there and they march back and forth. They fly up and down the streets. And I just watch who's near me with their backpacks, the pieces of paper, the babies, the luggage. Miss Jennings, Mr. Darsh, I asked before, maybe you could reach out to the mayor, but we know it's a lost cause because like someone said, the lady that was there, Sewell, her hands were tied. She couldn't do anything. And what's his name? Madre and Philip Bank. All of these are in those letters that have gone to the White House since 2009 that went under every single bus and train camera I've ever passed. Every. So wherever I'm at, if there's a camera, the letters have gone. May the 25th, I went to Transit 12 for help. Didn't get any. I just watched them march around. I called in there, Sewell's office, spoke to, I guess it was a cadet Batista. She said about sending an email. I said, I've been sending them, I think, since Raymond Kelly, Police Commissioner days. I called Stewart also in there. Then I went to 125th and sent the priority letters. I sent on the 25th of May, was it 5 o'clock, the letters? There was a call to 311 before I made it and a call to the 28th precinct, which is 2 blocks away, where I attempted to sit and eat something and the creeping around was unreal. That's my typical day. You could look at my diary and see everything is in my diary. I got pressure pain over there. I couldn't move. But you'll know that. I have a diary. I have no problem showing you my diary. I write down everything. But the letters go to the White House, go at every single camera. The CEO's names, Bezos, Whole Food, and all the places that I go that I'm harassed by the staff and the people that run in there, go in those letters. So again, if you could try and maybe speak to, I think it's Dawn Baskerville, the assistant to the mayor. I always put her name first when I send him an email. He gets many today when I go out, and the rest of them will get. Miss Jennings. When I leave, I fear for my life. Because see, oh, did you know this is drug related, right? You all must know that. And I don't do drugs. When I say a large cartel, large. Have a good day.
Ms. Jennings, for your comment. Do we have anyone else in the room who has a public comment, has a comment during our public session? Okay. Do we have any old business to come before the board? Any old business?
Apologies, Chair.
Old business. Do we have any new?
Ira, did someone else want to make public comment online? Or
Yes,
did I
we have
read it
somebody
all in
that,
text?
yes, we have somebody that just raised their hand, John McFarland.
You. Yeah, Hira. My name is John McFarland. I'm a leader with Vocal New York. I'm sure some of you would be familiar with my organization. Want to say peace to Jahai and Yahira, both of whom I know for a while now. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I just, I was just routinely listening in while I was doing some other work. And then, I heard about these mitigating penalties, caught my attention. And I just want to say that, part of the problem is that, the CCRB doesn't really have any enforcement tools. And so these mitigating penalties, these downgrades that will predominantly affect Black and brown individuals in the 5 boroughs, there's nothing that anybody can do to really stop it. We'll make our comments, right? But I find it fascinating that the NYPD, they were found guilty. The NYPD was found guilty of excessive stop and frisk back in 2011 by Judge Shira Scheinling. And it's incredible that like 10, 11, 12 years later, they think that a mitigating penalty should be training for stop and frisk or for unlawful entry. I mean, how do you factor in what kind of thinking do you have to possess to think that this far down the line that any officer who performs an unlawful stop and frisk should be given training? That's what the police academy is for. 6 months or 9 months or whatever the hell it is. That's where you receive training on a fundamental civil right like the Fourth Amendment. On a fundamental constitutional right like the Fourth and Fifth and First Amendments. That's where you receive your training. I can't see how any officer who's been on a job a year, 2 years, and will perform those type of violations can be the mitigating punishment for that would be training. I can't see how somebody could stop me or my little brother in the street, unlawfully frisk us because they got some anonymous tip about a Black man robbing a store 10 miles away, and then go in my pocket, search me, traumatize my family and my neighbors, and get 30 minutes of training. And like some of the members on the board said, the CCRB doesn't even know what that training consists of. Is it a slap on the wrist, don't do it again, and they're out of the door in 2 minutes? It's not fair. I don't think it's right. But until there's an agency or some type of mechanism that can hold NYPD officers accountable, until the process has been altered in a way that the NYPD commissioner cannot usurp the authority from the CCRB when they make their recommendations, then Black and brown people are going to suffer over and over again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for underscoring the fact that it is true that the NYPD Police Commissioner does have the final authority and arbiter of discipline that is recommended by the CCRB. Yahira, is there anyone else on the line?
That concludes the public session, Chair.
Thank you. And there's no one else in the room. Okay. Do we have any old business to come before the board? Any old business? Do we have any new business? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move that we break into executive session. The agenda for the executive session is the board will receive an update from the executive director on pending personnel actions and board member training, and the general counsel will update us on litigation. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
We don't have a quorum tonight, so we decided to hold it till next month.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? All right, the June meeting of the CCRB is now concluded. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.